This is episode 478 on the 4th of February 2022 on this beautiful Friday morning. The auction tamasha has reared its ugly head again. But what does that mean? An auction is usually a process of buying and selling goods or services by offering them up for bids, taking bids, and then selling the item to the highest bidder or buying the item from the lowest bidder. This is usually for antiques and commodities and buying and selling of rare products which are a rarity, that is buying a book, the original book of an author, or buying an antique piece which we will keep as a trophy. But in sports and in a few domestic competition, or as leagues as they are called, the definition of auction has really made it into a very different process. But it doesn't get away from the fact that the players are assets, not human beings. Players are assets to be recruited at a certain price. Higher the price, higher the expectations. Which means if a player is brought for an XYZ amount, it usually gives the indication that the management of their team gives value to that player, and then the media is also fooled by this process and they say, okay, he or she is brought for a higher price, which means they have some value. If certain players don't get recruited or don't get the amount, then they're not good enough. For example, a certain player was recruited for a huge amount, but the amount the player was brought for, the player was not able to fulfill the expectation of their managers, owners, or whatever be the term. And what did that mean? The question was, why was this player? Then we have a human beings are a very strange species. We look at things from the point of view of value. So if you are brought for a certain amount, you have to fulfill the expectations that yes, if you are brought for 20 crores, you have to be valued on that. But if you are brought for 20 crores and you don't even make 200 ones in the entire competition, then maybe next time you will not be given that. And then you become this scapegoat for things that are not to be done. The Indian T20 Domestic World Cup has reduced players as assets and to a joke to be bought and sold, and higher the price, the higher the performance expectations. So, what does it all mean? It means the team management says, I own you. I have recruited you for a certain amount. You now have a contractual obligation. And I think it's a shameful way to look at human beings, but it's been accepted because apart from the Indian T20 Domestic World Cup, other sports are also a part of this, especially the English football tournament, where we look at players from the amount they have brought and then we say, yes, they deserve it, they don't deserve it. We can debate over whether certain players deserve this particular respect of being brought at a certain price, or they don't deserve the respect of being brought at a certain price. Indian players are obligated to play for their respective teams, and they have to play all the matches because they are marquee players, they are big name players, and because they have been recruited for that amount, you have to then make sure that you squeeze the life out of that players. And no one, we all know, when it comes to such tournaments, time management is ignored. The match may start at 7 p.m., 7:30 p.m., but somehow it will drag itself till 11:30 p.m. You look at, as I said before, you look at the Australian domestic competition. It fulfills the time management. They care about time management. They know that a 20 over game has to finish in 3 hours 15 minutes, 3 hours 20 minutes, and no time is wasted. And that's the best part. And this year, there were a lot of infections and lot of things happening, yet they managed that tournament. You can look at it anyway. Yes, there are contractual obligations where players are recruited and they are part of the draft. But do we really need to know which player is brought for what amount? How will that affect me? How will that put me in this situation? And oh, look, these players are being spoiled. Oh, look, how much money is being spent on them when certain people cannot even afford a quarter of that amount. These players get so much and then they don't perform, and yet we give them the respect. Well, that's a shameful way we are looking at someone from the point of view of monetary value, but that's human mindset, and that is not going away, that remains. And then the mantra is, I have bought you, means I have recruited you, I can squeeze the life out of you as and when I want, and you cannot complain, but you're discarded if you don't perform or my team doesn't win the championship. So a few teams have retained a few players they think are marquee players, big name players, top stars, whatever be the terminology. A few players were let go because there was a retention policy, and then there was a release policy that players have to be released. And then we have a very strange way of looking at things, that certain individuals may not provide the value. They are, and then the age factor comes in. How do you look at that? A 26-year-old versus a 36-year-old. A 26-year-old will be an investment for the next decade, hopefully. A 36-year-old may be an investment for the next, for only for this particular season or tournament. We don't know whether this 36 or 37-year-old will be fit enough. Will they make runs, or are they not allowing other players to come in? So this debate will always be there. And then, of course, the pseudo media, the print and electronic media, and everyone becomes a part of this charade. Everyone is discussing, yes, the mega tamasha is going to happen in a week's time. This will decide the future. We have two new teams, which means 17 matches, which means another 15 days added. As everyone knows, this tournament is going to start from 27th of March. So my question is, the 5-day domestic competition is also going to start before that. Why don't we have options for that? Why don't we pay the Ranji Trophy players the same amount we pay them? Why can't we do that? What's the shame in that? Because I don't see any difference between this tournament and that tournament. Why can't we put them under the same microscope? Talking about microscope, when you are recruited for a certain amount, whether it's a job or it's this tournament, this is nothing less than a job. See it as a summer internship, extra pay to have some fun, and that's the way things are. You are under the microscope, and that's the way things are. You don't perform, people will ask, did he deserve to be recruited for that amount? Was the salary good enough? Did the team managers make an error by buying this player? And this, every year this debate happens, because every alternate year the Junior World Cup happens. And once it happens, whether India as a team succeeds or not, yes, this year they have made to the final, but even if they are not in the final, whether they have succeeded or not, they have made their names, they have already been playing through the ranks. I shall talk about more of that in detail in the next episode. But yes, every year the question is, should the Junior World Cup players, or every alternate year, should the Junior World Cup players be a part of this tournament? Will they be spoiled? Will the spotlight of or playing in front of a certain crowd, even if it's 5,000 or 10,000, because they are known names, yet they are unknown names. I'm sure everyone is ecstatic about a certain individual called Kohli and Raina, but when they came into this tournament, they were unknown players. Kohli was certainly unknown. Of course, he's now this marquee, big name player, but he was a nobody when he made his debut. And most of these Junior World Cup players make their debut in this tournament before they make their national debut. And there, once again, the debate is which should come first, the national debut or a debut in this tournament. And this debate doesn't end. And then the question comes, is the price right? As you know, Indian players are barred from participating in the competing events, which I think is a very outdated and a moronic policy. They should be allowed to compete. Why not? For example, let's be specific. Players like Uthappa and they Raina was discarded from the Indian team after 2017, 2018. He wasn't good enough to continue, so he was only 32. But and then he doesn't play for most of the year, and then he may or may not be selected by a team this year. He may go unsold, as is the term. So why shouldn't someone like him? He is not contracted by the board. His contract with his new team or old team depends on whether he will be recruited, which means someone like him and Uthappa and a lot of players are free agents. So why can't they play? At least do that much. If other countries can allow players to play in other leagues, for example, Rashid Khan, there is not one tournament in which this guy doesn't play. That's the definition of a free agent. He'll be playing for Adelaide, for the Australian team. He'll be playing for Multan, for our neighboring country. Of course, he'll be playing in Sri Lanka. He will be playing in every tournament possible. He'll be playing in the West Indies Caribbean tournament. And that's the definition of a free agent. But then let's get even more into this debate. Pseudo experts will discuss which team needs what kind of players, which team needs an all rounder, which team needs a good keeper, who should be the captain of which team. Of course, a few players have been earmarked as future captains and taking a team into the next 7, 8 years. Well, we can debate it, right, and whether the price is right, and how for new players in the Junior World Cup teams it will change their life. The spotlight. But remember, not all who play here are elevated or graduate to the next level. Not every player who plays for Junior World Cup gets elevated to play for the national team. Not everyone, remember that. Not everyone does that. Very few players. I'll discuss that who all made it, who all missed out as the episode continues, and more often in the next episode. But that's the way the question is the price right? Is this player worth the amount he is being recruited for? Are the team managers of different teams doing the right thing? Have they done their research? Have they seen that this player has the pedigree? And of course, is the player in good relationship with the management, the coaches, and other people? That's a debate which never ends, especially the ones where the Junior World Cup teams are involved. So once again, this mega tamasha is going to happen in a week, but I will have no interest in watching that. But one tournament which doesn't get that kind of spotlight goes under the radar. It's being telecasted and broadcasted, but still it doesn't get that kind of an attention is the Junior Under 19 World Cup. It happens every alternate year. And of course, we are excited about the new talent coming in because we need a couple of young Turks, as the term is, a couple of 17, 18-year-olds to take the team forward. Because now what we have is a transition phase. We have a couple of semi-experienced individuals, a couple of them who are in their late 30s. Believe me, if you're in your late 30s, you are still young. But in the world of sports, a 35-year-old in the world of sports may as well be a 75-year-old in any other profession. That's how we look at them. India goes on to beat Australia, and of course, the captain plays a huge role. Doesn't matter who the captain is, because take the example of an Unmuk Chand. He won his team the competition in 2012, if you're being specific, yet he was never ever given the chance to play for the national team. I don't know what happened. Was it his own form, the ego, the relationship with the various people? I don't know what happened. I don't know why he wasn't elevated. He would have been a good addition wherever he wanted to play, as an opener or any other position. And then he played 1 or 2 years in the domestic competition, and then he disappears. And then what happens? He does something, and then he is playing for the Australian T20 competition. But then he is not contracted to the Indian board. He is not contracted to any of the teams. He is another free agent, and he's only playing because technically he may not be citizen of India. I don't know how the story is, but it was good to see him play. But that also, his selection in that tournament came at a later stage, but it was good. Nevertheless, it really raised some eyebrows. That is this how are we going to treat our players? There was another guy called Smith Patel. He went to US and he's playing in competitions over there. He may start playing for this Australian competition or any other competition. But that's what really irks me. As I said, not every player from the Junior World Cup graduates, and this has changed once this tournament began in 2008, because till that, your performance in the Junior World Cup and other underage and age group tournaments and Ranji Trophy and whatever were the platform to play for the national team. We can debate on it, how one performance can affect the other. Once this Indian Paisa League, Indian Tamasha League started, things changed. You made your debut in this tournament before your debut at the national level. Yes, still a few players are given a chance. What goes on in the minds of the selectors, I don't know. Not everybody gets a chance. Nobody from the class of 2020 till couple of weeks ago, Ravi Bishnoi got a chance. There are so many good players, but we have a weird way of looking at players. If you don't perform in the domestic World Cup, then you're not good enough to play in the national team. I disagree with that, but what's the logic behind it is something even I don't understand. It just baffles me. It just puts me in a dilemma. I don't know what to think on it. But it can be debated. And as I said, how will these players, everyone knows what they will do. They have seen before this, because Kohli and Jadeja, for example, then there was Unmuk Chand who played for a while. Rishabh Pant also was part of the Junior World Cup team. Did not win, but was a part. Ishan Kishan was a part. Washington Sundar was a part. They made their debuts. Then the class of 2018, you had Prithvi Shaw and Shubman Gill, and there are a couple of other players who haven't got an opportunity. And then there's, of course, the class of 2020, where only Ravi Bishnoi till recently got a chance. There's, of course, Rahul Chahar, maybe a class of 2016 or 2020. I don't know which one comes before. So they have got a chance, and of course, but Junior World Cup is like board exams as in this part of the world. Your performance in board exams only are a door to a college, but how you do in college, or anywhere before that, your those performances don't make a difference, because if you look at websites, if you look at, there are no archives. Junior World Cup is just there for the sake of being there. You can question it. I'll talk more about the Junior World Cup and a lot of trivia on it in the next episode. But I'm curious as to what happens tomorrow night. India will take on England in the final. When you have made it to the finals without losing matches, then the question comes: why can't the senior team do the same? Every time this happens, we say, why can't the senior team do the same? But then not every time the senior, because there is no spotlight on this World Cup. Okay, it's being broadcasted because the International Cricket Federation has some things to fulfill, so they broadcasted. This tournament could have easily been not broadcast, could have gone untelevised, but it happened. Yet, I don't think that kind of limelight, spotlight is for them as it is once you have a senior World Cups. Winning this doesn't add to the trophy because it's a totally separate thing, it's a separate box altogether. It does give them some kind of a lift, but it doesn't mean that if you win the Junior World Cup, you will be winning the Senior World Cup. Kohli is one of the few individuals to have done both, along with Yuvraj Singh having won the Junior World Cup and a 20-over World Cup. So very few players have done both. But if one of these players even makes it to the national team, they will be what they are, juniors. They will be in front of 33, 34-year-olds who have been playing for 14 years. So they will be interns. You may get selected in a team of 15, but doesn't mean that you will get selected in a team of 11. Kohli was up and down. Kohli was not regularly selected till 2011, 2012. Once they discarded the likes of Sehwag and Gambhir and Yuvraj and Raina, then Kohli became an important part. You look at previous scoreboards, Kohli was not in every team. He was up and down. He was not being selected. Had he been selected, he would have played at least 300 matches by today, not pending injuries. So yes, it doesn't mean that just because you are there. Of course, we talk about Prithvi Shaw, not part of the team, but this guy may go on to play 350, 50-over matches, 100 test matches. You don't know. So it's difficult to evaluate this situation. As I said, once you go from the junior national team to the senior national team, things will change by design and default. You were a senior in the junior team, you will remain a junior in the senior team, and not every match will you get a chance to be selected for. That is something that happens by default, and no one can control that situation. That's the way things work. So this ends episode number 478 on the 4th of February 2022. I will be back with episode number 479 on the 7th of February 2022. Till then, stay tuned.